Hey, it's me, Big Head. Before we begin the podcast, I want to say this podcast was recorded several days prior to Sergeant Osworth being targeted in a cowardly act by a coward. Sergeant Osworth, you're in the hospital now and you're recovering. I haven't had an update today, which is Friday, but I want you to know this. Your brothers and sisters in arms, as well as the retirees that you worked with and the community of Baton Rouge, we're lifting you up in prayer, and we're trying to let everyone know in your family that we have resources out here. You have a chief of police, you have the union, and everybody else. They've recently done a jambalaya cook-off and a blood drive on your behalf. Anything you and your family need, to the family members of Sergeant Osworth, this is a stand-up guy. He's a good cop. He's a good friend. He's a loyal servant. We appreciate the fact that y'all allow us to have him in our lives, and we pray that he has a speedy recovery. To the family members also, anything that y'all need to help in this process, please let someone know. I know the department, the mayor, and everybody else has reached out to y'all, but we're all here to help. Sergeant Osworth, Caleb, if you're listening, or whenever you can listen, somebody playing this podcast, I want you to know one thing personally. I knew you when you was a young cop. You came up. You and B. Smith used to work evening shift. Our shifts overlapped it because I would see you on Fridays. It was a pleasure working with you. I liked being out on the streets with you and him. And I thought you were a very good street cop. I thought you was fair. You was firm. I thought that you did your best to make sure the community was well represented and that you took the bad guys out of the equation whenever you could. Also, I want to say this. You moved on to motors, and then as a motor cop riding a Harley, you did what motor cops do. You out there, you put yourself in danger all the time just being on that bike. In this cowardly act where somebody would actually target you on a bike when you were vulnerable and drug you and left you for dead, well, they didn't understand how you were built. I know how you were built. Your friends know how you were built. You a dog. You the kind of guy that's going to fight. And we know that you're going to have a long recovery, and you're going to need a lot of support. We're here to support you. We're here to help financially as well as emotionally. Lean on us. To the family members of Caleb, lean on us. Let everybody out here be your support group. Caleb, we love you. Heal up, my brother, and let's get to the podcast. Hey, thanks for tuning into my podcast. This is Big Head on the Block, hosted by me, Tim Henderson, a.k.a. Big Head. Hey, welcome back to Big Head on the Block. Today, we're reaching up high. I have Chief TJ Morse as our guest. Welcome aboard, Chief.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate you having me, man.
Now, during the course of this conversation, because you never were my chief, and I knew you as TJ, I may refer to you as TJ, so just letting you know it's not out of disrespect.
Please call me TJ the whole time. Please do.
Okay. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast. And what I like to do is get people to introduce themselves, because I have people that are here locally, but I have people from out of state, and we have several other countries that people listen in. So tell us a little bit about yourself, when your career started, and you don't have to go into all the years, but just tell us what divisions you were in and then how you became the chief.
Yeah, sure. So my career in law enforcement actually started, I was going to LSU trying to build my resume. So I became a reserve at the sheriff's office while I was a student at LSU. I did that for a couple of years. Actually, because of that, changed my whole career goals. I was going to LSU thinking that I wanted to go in federal law enforcement, and I was just building my resume to do that. And then being out on the streets and interacting with the public, doing that local police work, getting in pursuits and having fun, I decided I wanted to, kind of stay and just do local police work instead of federal. And so after I graduated from LSU, I joined the Baton Rouge Police Department. That was 2003, March of 2003. Department has been so good to me. I love the Baton Rouge Police Department. Got to do a lot of great things. I was in uniform patrol, of course, in 1st District, dog shift for many years. Then I moved into K-9 division, had a dog and worked in the K-9 division for about 7 years. So still working at night, mainly in North Baton Rouge. I was on SWAT team for 15 to 16 years. And then I moved over to the training academy. Was at the training academy, started off just as an instructor, and then moved up to the academy director, and then finally over commander of all the training services over the range, academy, and recruiting. So a lot of good things, with SWAT and the training academy, all those kind of things. I got to, go all around the country, become a defensive tactics instructor, active shooter instructor, master firearms instructor, all those kind of great things. And so really great things at the department.
Okay, well, that's good, man. That's an impressive background. A lot of people that are listening, they don't understand the dynamics of a police department per se, but with Baton Rouge City Police, you have to everything at until recently was seniority based as far as promotions. However, the ability to transfer from division to division meant that you had to put in application. You had to go through a formal interview process, and then you had to go through the selection. And the divisions that he's referring to, is specifically the K-9, they don't necessarily have a lot of openings because people usually stay there for a long time. Sometime when they make rank, they move out. So that was a prestigious spot to get. So kudos to you for getting that. You were a solid uniform patrol guy. And that's when I first met you, 2003. I was assigned the 1st District Evening Shift, and I was able to correspond with you. And the one thing I realized early, and I told you this, you were an extremely nice guy, an effective cop, but you was still a rookie. So, you wasn't doing anything that impressive for me to comment on. But you as an individual, man, I really liked you. And I told you, you're a nice guy. Don't let this department change you. Don't let what you see out here change you. And I think consistently your demeanor and the way you interact with people has been consistent. I feel like you fair to people, the times that I've seen you interact with them. And like I said, you never were my chief. The mayor, the previous administration went through a selection process and chose you. So kind of tell me at that point in time, whenever, because you were head of training academy, you put in, you took the test with the rest of us. Eventually, you were selected by the mayor. Tell us, the joy or the, because at some point in time, the reality had to hit you that this is a very consuming job. So kind of just give us some of the emotions you felt whenever you got the call, and then shortly thereafter having to kind of put everything together.
Yeah, so I will share with you and everybody listening that when I put in, I really thought I didn't have much of a chance. I thought I was a very big long shot. 23 years on the department. I didn't have as much experience as a lot of people putting it in. Never worked in any kind of administration or anything. Just kind of always considered myself a cop's cop, just from being on SWAT and, being in a lot of different things like that. That's how I spent my career, not in internal affairs or in admin. And so, I put in mainly because I saw the need. I saw the direction that the department was going. I've always been a guy in my entire life playing sports and stuff that, hey, if it's bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, I want to be the one at bat. If it's 4th and goal, give me the ball. And so I saw the department in that kind of situation where we needed somebody to step up. And I said, well, if not me, then who? So let me give it a shot and see what I can do to help out the men and women that make up this department. The other thing is I did not know that it was going to be me until less than 12 hours before the press conference.
Oh, wow.
So, so everybody knew that week, that Thursday morning at 9 a.m., there was going to be a press conference announcing who the next chief was. And so that entire week, I was talking to other people that were the finalists. They're like, hey, have you gotten a call? Have you gotten a call? And nobody had gotten a call. I'm like, well, somebody is lying, or right. I don't know what's going on. Or maybe it's the guy that was outside the department, and so that's why nobody knows.
Right.
Literally Wednesday night, Mayor Broom texted me at about 8:30 and said, hey, will you be available for a phone call in an hour? And I said, yes, ma'am. Texted back, yes, ma'am, sure. And I told my wife, hey, she's going to be calling and, letting me down. Just waiting until night before the press conference, last minute, to say, hey, not you, but thank you for applying.
Right.
So I was in the bed watching TV with her, staying up, waiting for the phone call, and literally about 9:45, almost 10 o'clock at night, phone rang, and it was Mayor Broom. And she was leaving an event, and she would like me to be the next police chief, and could I be in her office the next morning at 8 a.m. for a press conference? And
wow.
I didn't have much time to let it sink in and really think about, okay, now it's time to get to work. It took me a little bit to get geared up for that, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what happened in the bed, but I can imagine the covers got messed up. You was kicking and screaming, happy. That's good, man. That's a good story,
my
man.
My wife would hit me on my arm because I was like, "Yes, ma'am. It would be an honor. Yes, thank you, ma'am." And so she was only hearing my side of the conversation, and she's hitting me on the arm trying to figure out what the heck I was talking about.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can imagine. You should have put her on speakerphone. Yeah, that she probably was chomping at the bits to hear. Yeah, I can see my wife doing the same thing. Like, what's going on? What's going on? Well, that's a good story, man. And I'll say this: I did a podcast with the mayor. It hadn't been released yet, and I told him the reason I put in, and I was not 100%. The words weren't the same, but the reasoning was the same behind why I put in for chief, because I was retired. And anybody that knows me knows I was a street guy. I was a crime fighter. I never cared to be the chief. I had been the chief of police in Killian only because I believed in the people and the administration. The mayor, Kenny Bahe, he was really the only reason I took that job, because I've never thought about being a chief. But I put in the same time you did for the same reasons. I didn't want to say, hey, these are the only candidates. The direction of the department's going in this direction. If I don't put in, then who else, And what's really funny is a lot of these cops piss me off, and I guess you would be part of that crew. I didn't know any of y'all were putting in. I really thought it was going to be like 3 or 4 people, and it was like 20-something people. And I was like,
yeah, there was a lot more than I thought, actually.
Yeah, I think it was like 23 or 24. But whenever I talked to my wife, I said, look, I'm not really interested in being a chief. They got a lot of good candidates. And I said, but if I don't continue the process, they still may pick somebody that I didn't think was good for the department. So I went through the process, and look, I was proud. I passed the test. I went through the formal interview process with the committee like you did. Now, the thing I didn't like about the committee, and it wasn't your committee, it was the mayor's committee at the time. I didn't like the fact that the police department wasn't represented, and these were a lot of people from the community. But I really think you should have at least had a police officer, ex-chief, or somebody on the committee to say, hey, especially people that knew us, because most all of us, except 2 people, I think, were police officers. You got Inglade, you got Ferries, you got LaDuff, you got all these people. One of them would have probably been happy to sit on that committee and say, hey, no, Tim's a good guy, Tim's not a good guy, Tim can't get this accomplished, TJ, this, that, and the other. But it didn't happen that way. The mayor made her selection. You made the top 5, and then you got selected 12 hours before. So I guess she gave you more time. At least she didn't call you at 7, right, in the morning.
Yeah, I got a little bit of time to get my thoughts together.
And it's funny about, kind of leaving hanging, because we will call each other and say, hey, man, did you hear about this job, that job? And a lot of times cops, they'll want to tell you, but they've been sworn to secrecy, because cops never going to keep secrets. Cops always tell their friend who they trust, and then their friend tells their friend who they trust. So if you would have, if she would have told you a week before, we would have all known within 2 or 3 days, only because she probably told people too who told somebody. Ain't many secrets in Baton Rouge. Let me put it that way. And I'm sure every profession is the same way. It's not like anybody's doing anything malicious. It's just like, hey, man, did you hear? Did you hear?
Oh, yeah. It's that water cooler talk. But, yeah, this was definitely kept close to the chest.
Yeah. So you took over. Day one, you went to your press conference. You were relatively unknown in the community as far as the entire community. Obviously, you had a base of people that knew you. But honestly, I was surprised that you got selected. And it wasn't because of anything derogatory. It was just that I thought you were young, and I thought they had people a little more seasoned. So that was, it kind of caught me off guard as well. I had been hearing some names, and then you came into play. And I'm proud because I knew you from the beginning. I'm proud that you went through the process and were selected. And that's monumental. And to go over one of Jerry Bloom, you remember Jerry Bloom, he retired as a captain?
Yeah.
He always said, I
know him from when he was a negotiator, and I was on spot.
That's right. His phrase was, now you're the chief of police of a major metropolitan police department. And so you woke up one day, you was a cop. The next day, you an administrator. Still a cop, but an administrator. So tell me that when you took over.
That's probably, I still consider myself a cop. I'm still getting out there riding with the guys because I think it's important. That's just the kind of person I am. I think that's who I am as a leader. That's just who I am as a person. So I still get out there and go ride and make traffic stops with the guys. Got in vehicle pursuit a couple months ago. I was first on the scene to a shooting not too long ago and put a tourniquet on a guy. So I'm still out there. I think it's important to be connected, to be accessible, and not lose touch with what's going out on the streets.
Yeah, and look, that's commendable, and that ain't for every chief, but you probably have the makeup to continue that. And it does show leadership, and it shows that you still, from an elementary standpoint, a cop, just like you said, you're still a cop. Now, that being said, let's focus, now that you're talking about responding to calls and stuff, I want to ask you a few questions about uniform patrol. Now, it's a cliche and analogy. Uniform patrol is the backbone of the police department. However,
100%.
100%. I was a UP guy, and I still promote and support UP, and I think that they don't ever get enough attention and enough resources. So because you're short shift, you have previous to your administration, there was a lot of departures. And if what the mayor said earlier, I think he told me that there was 140-ish openings. So obviously your uniform
156.
156. Okay. So your uniform patrol division is probably suffering. So what are you doing not only to help these guys with manpower, but what are you doing to make their life a little bit more convenient? Because these districts they work at are some of the same districts I worked at 30 years ago, and they're not a good environment. So touch on one, and if you forget the question, I'll remind you about the districts later.
Yeah, so some of the things that we're just looking at was we're not just short in uniform patrol, because I do agree is they're the backbone. So we're short entire department-wise. We have less homicide detectives than we did 10 years ago. We have less crime scene investigators. We have less holes, quote unquote. Back in the day, we had holes where people would just hide, right? That they were doing non-police type jobs. Everything from bicycle registration to, different things like that, and alarm enforcement.
Right. We
don't have those anymore. It's kind of every hand on deck. Where supervisors, it's not like back in the day where you never saw your supervisors. They're actually having to handle cases and do police work. Some of the things I did last year when I first took over was I found that we needed to be, as a whole department, more mission ready, especially with our lack of manpower. So one of the things I implemented had mixed reviews. Admit that is that I did this mission ready uniform patrol readiness schedule, so that anybody not in uniform patrol, going from me down, nobody was exempt except for the only people who were exempt was mayor security, because they just got their own thing, and there's only a couple of them.
Right.
But everybody else in the entire department had to do rotation and uniform patrol. We had 4 people a day assigned to first, second, third, one person assigned to first, one second, one third, one fourth. And it was basically just alphabetical order, 4 people on every day. And it would come around 7 times a year or so, where you would go and work a shift. So, and when I first did it, you could tell that we needed it, because you had all these people that hadn't worked a shift uniform in a long time because of just their positions. They were having to go to supply and make sure they had gun belts that fit and uniforms that fit, have to be reminded how to log into a computer to work CAD, and just these different things. So I think it was very successful. It helped out the uniform patrol guys just a little bit. It let them kind of interact with these officers who they had never seen, and some of these officers that had never seen some of these guys in uniform, and talk about things. Why do y'all do this on these kind of investigations? And why do y'all look for this? Everybody, and it's really everybody from detectives to administration. That worked really, really well. It's still going on right now. I'm about to stop it at the end of this month, however, because just some budget things that we're having to deal with this year, having to reduce overtime and how much people work. And to do that, because of that, I've had to say, if you're not in uniform patrol, the only way you can make holiday pay is if you go out and work uniform patrol on your shift. You can't get holiday pay just at your desk doing your regular job. You have to go, you work uniform patrol if you want holiday pay. And since officers are now having to do the uniform patrol shifts during a holiday, I'm backing off on that rotating list for the rest of the year.
I want to go back to since you're on that topic, I want to ask you this. Is that from, I understand y'all under some kind of budget constraints. I know, actually, I don't know the numbers, and I don't want to get into them because it's not That's for some other podcast, not this one. But typically, the gripes and complaints are going to come from your detectives because you're taking them out of their element. So holiday pay specifically, you're taking the other format away, and you're just going to focus on if you're here on a holiday, that's whenever you work uniform patrol. Do you think from a morale standpoint that that's going to kind of get into the minds of the detectives and kind of piss them off, I guess is the easiest way to say?
Well, they definitely, it's going to affect different people different ways, right?
Right.
Some people love the idea of having to go work uniform patrol. Some people weren't that happy about it. But I thought that it was a good kind of give and take now that they're having to work uniform patrol in their holiday, and that's the only way they can get holiday pay, was to give back where now you don't have to also do this rotation thing. So hoping that is kind of a give and take, give a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
since I am taking from them.
Yeah. And look, man, that's objectively speaking, I was a detective for a lot of years, and I would have been mad about it, but I would have done it because, first of all, and I want to go back to what you said about them having to go to supply to get shirts that fit, gun belts, how to log in, the very basic function that people forget, and they forget this when they go to detectives, especially if they're in something like homicide that you might stay in 20, 30 years, burglary, you know what I mean? They lose track that, hey, your primary objective is to be a cop, and you should always be combat ready. And if you're telling me 7 times a year your rotation comes up, that gives you the opportunity 7 times, because you don't have to shave now because you have a beard policy. That gives you the opportunity 7 times a year to make sure that you're still a cop. Because whenever it comes down to some kind of mass participation and like riots or whatever, hurricanes, we need to know that you are effective. We need to know that you combat ready. So I commend you for doing that. I understand why people are mad about it. If I was a detective, I probably would have been mad because I was on the street forever and I didn't never lose touch with the streets. But that was a good program implemented objectively speaking. I'm glad that you did that. And I hope all the people that get mad at me that might be listening, if you're a detective, all I can say is saddle up.
Yeah, and it wasn't just detectives. Like, it was everybody from anybody in operational management to admin, everyone, including myself and all my deputy chiefs. Yeah. We were pulling shifts and out there working.
Well, and that's good.
I worked second district evening shift. Said, give me a zone, and I handled. When I worked my second district evening rotation, I handled 10 file numbers in my shift. Right. I mean, I was just humping and going. 10
file
went around.
Man, I didn't handle 10 file numbers in 2 weeks. If you ask bro, stupid. Look, I appreciate your candor, man, and I appreciate the fact because, like I said, in the cop world, unless you lived it, you don't understand how this. You said people are affected differently, and that's 100% true because some people are okay putting the uniform back on. Some people never wanted to put it back on once they went to detectives. But being ready is good. So I commend you for that. The people that are going to get mad about the overtime, it is what it is. Sometimes administrative decisions have to be made. And I've talked to every previous chief on different levels, and I told them all the same thing. It's like being an umpire or a referee. If you can get 50% of the people to be happy, you've really accomplished what you set out for. Because cops, they're like soldiers. They bellyache and gripe, but they do the job for the most part, whether they want to or not. And that's the job of the supervisors to make sure the delivery to your orders are given in a fair way. And a lot of supervisors, if you listen to supervisors, and I know a lot of y'all do listen, you have got to hear what the chief says, take his directives, and put it out and make the delivery to where these guys understand this is the objective. You may not agree with it, but this is the best thing for the department because ultimately you're making the decisions, right?
Yep. And I will say this, 156 officers short, but our officers are out there doing amazing work every day, right? We're back in the day when we were on a squad, right? First district evening shift, first district dog shift, you have 13, 14 guys on squad with you, right? Somewhere between 12 and 14. That was normal back in the day.
Yeah.
Now they got 7 to 8, some squads 9 if they're lucky, right, on a squad. That's the entire squad, right? And of course, you're going to always have somebody calling in sick or whatever. So the sergeants are having to step up and answer calls and work zones. Just all around the department, the officers are stepping up in hopes that we can kind of turn a corner and get some recruiting up, rework our budget to get some more money and get more officers to help them out. But they're just doing amazing work. To see that, crime is going down, and I got to knock on wood and superstitious, but crime is trending down, and it's all because the officers, even though they're overworked and underpaid, they're out there doing amazing stuff.
Yeah.
With our budget cuts and all that, I mean, the officers are being paid less money this year than they were last year because of the decrease in overtime and limit on holidays and all that, but they are doing an amazing job.
Well, okay. Well, kudos to you for addressing all that, man, because a lot of times people think the chief don't care and the chief's implementing these policies. And I mean, honestly, man, being on the street for all the years I was on, there's a lot of stupid stuff that comes from administrators, and some of it makes sense and some of it don't. Some of it's just like way out in left field, but the things that you talk about seem really good. Now, working conditions, besides that, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th district, they redid 4th district, I think in the late 90s or built it maybe. I think that was probably the newest one, but you see the fire department with these nice facilities, and I'm not saying you have to go build new buildings, but there's not good areas, because you've talked about officers going to a homicide and then having to go handle another case and then another case, and they don't really have any good downtime, any place to go and maybe heat their food up. These places are old and antiquated. Are you able with the finances you have or through grants to get better quarters for these guys to work out of?
Yeah, so we took some ARP money from last year and have devoted that, and right now 1st District is completely getting gutted and remodeled. You won't hardly recognize it except for the cells, right? It didn't really touch those much, but the rest of it is going to be really nice. There's actually a room. The whole purpose of the room is a down room for officers. Nice offices, nice roll call room, everything. Completely new floors, a whole new thing, new bathroom with a shower in there, all that at 1st District. My hope is to go around and try to 2nd District is next. I think that the whole building needs to just be torn down. It is way too old. We're working with some private-public partnerships, looking at maybe building a new 2nd District building and getting some help with working with some private partners with donations to get that done.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Definitely, there is something to be said about, hey, where you're working out of gives you a sense of pride and turns around to give a better service to the community.
Yep. Well, okay, that's another good thing. So I'm glad we did the podcast. I hear through the rumor mill, but it's not. You don't never hear the good. You only hear the negative stuff. So that's one reason I was glad to have you on here, so you could get the word out about the good things that are going on, and not all the bell aching.
The 6th floor of the headquarters building right now is completely being remodeled. It should be done in a couple months to house the new training academy. The training academy will be state of the art up there. The entire floor is training academy. We're going to actually have legit locker rooms for the trainees with showers and real lockers and not just hodgepodge, but really nice 3 classrooms, one of which is going to have auditorium style seating. And so my vision for it is really to be able to host a lot more training classes, have all these companies come to us, want to host training academies, and then we can put officers in there for free since we're hosting it. We got so many officers that are train the trainer and things. We can host other agencies here and teach them stuff, maybe even charge to have them here to make up for some budget stuff, but really have that 6th floor be the state of the art for the entire state and the area. One of the nicest training academies in the entire region up there.
Man, that's outstanding, man. I'm glad to hear that. I was telling the mayor, Baton Rouge, I think I'm not going to give a time frame, but just say recently, prior to you being the chief, I think that the department suffered as a whole from a standpoint of just the optics. I think that and you've been to competitions, Baton Rouge used to be a standard across the country. We participated, we won events, we had the motor people, the K-9 division, we had other people, SWAT teams, training and competing nationally, and we were nationally, you could go anywhere, and you've been more places than me out there, but we used to hold a lot of clout. And those of us that are retired and those of us that are still there that are older, we hope that you can bring the prestige back to this department, because I feel like it's been lacking, in the previous administration. And I'm not laying the blame on anybody. It is what it is, because nationally, police take a hit also. But the things that you're saying seem like they're going to put us back in the forefront. And I'll always say us, because once you are a police officer for a police department, for as long as I was with BRPD, I say us because it's still us, even though I'm retired. So kudos to you for some of the things you're doing. I'm going to bring up a topic.
For sure. We got to be in the national spotlight. I mean, we're the capital city of the state of Louisiana. We're a capital city police department. And I mean, we don't do a very good job of bragging on ourselves. And so if we're not going to brag on ourselves, no one else is. We do need to do a better job of letting everybody know the amazing things we do at the department.
Yeah. And I can tell you, because I see social media and obviously I watch the news, I notice that you're one of the people that are actually, I always say transparency is the word that's overutilized and underused. In reality, nobody's really transparent, but I see that you try to put as much out as you can, and you answer questions. I seen a recent story where you were kind of put on the spot and you answered questions, and I thought you answered admirably. So kudos to you for trying to bolster the image of the police department. The next thing I'm going to talk about is, this is taboo to every chief. Nobody will do it. Everybody thinks that, the world's going to fall apart if they do. But given the manpower issues, have you considered the 12-hour shift option? And it's going to piss a lot of people off, and it's going to make a lot of people happy. But is there anything that you are considering or have considered, or is just not an option?
Yeah, so definitely have considered everything as an option, right? We've looked at 12-hour shifts. We've looked at 8-hour shifts. We've looked at changing the way we do the current 10-hour shift schedule. Nothing is off the table when we're in a situation like this. No other chief before, and I've been asking around and trying to get advice, has been in a situation like I am right now, where we're 156 officers short, and on top of that, have a $12 million budget cut, right? So last year, I was able to supplement our manpower shortage by throwing money at it, by paying officers overtime to be more officers on the street, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Well, this year I don't have that option because of the huge hit that we had. And I know you said you didn't really want to get into the exact numbers, which is fine, but it's kind of hard to overlook because it's such a big part of the problem.
You can get into
the money.
Yeah, you can get into it whatever you want.
So it's a hard thing not to talk about, because it's one of the biggest problems that we have when 90% of our budget is payroll, and we're having to ask to make up $9 to $12 million being cut from last year, what we spent last year. Then we got to cut overtime, right? And so we can't pay the officers to get out there and work overtime to make up for the shortage we have. So we definitely have to get creative. But going back to your original question about 12-hour shifts, it's definitely been considered, talked around. I brought back, I have regular communication with the union and the union leadership, and gone to a union meeting and said, hey, nothing's off the table. Y'all talk to me and let them hear all their complaints and put rumors to bed, all those kind of things. I which had never been done before, but I created an internal advisory council. And so it's a group of employees, and I say employees because it's officers, dispatchers, secretaries, everybody in between that I meet with once a month. And I hear from them and ask them and bounce things off of them. The thing with the 12-hour shifts is, one, if you do it like other departments like the sheriff's office and stuff, it's going to cost more money because you're going to have built-in overtime, basically, because you work more than 80 hours in the 2 weeks with the way it just falls out and works. So it's going to cost more money, which we don't have. Or you could do some kind of overlap thing where people are not working, they work some 12s, but then an 8, so they don't go over their 80 hours in a pay period. But then so basically all you're doing is taking that evening shift, who only has 7 officers on it right now, and you're taking 3 of them and putting them on day shift, and another 3 and putting them on 3 or 4 and putting them on dog. But you can't take all of them because you have to put some of them on the swing shifts to do an overlap.
Right.
And so you're not increasing manpower by that much when you put it on paper.
Yeah.
And then you come into this whole question of what do you do with the lieutenants, the 8 lieutenants that that work on the evening shifts at the 4 districts. What do you do with those positions? You just leave them kind of in the middle, as extra or swing shift people.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to consider when you're talking about going to just 12-hour shifts, because there's a lot of way to do the 12-hour shifts.
Yeah. Well, okay. So in a 2-week rotation, you work 84 hours. There was talk years ago just letting the people off for the 4 hours, or you can pay them straight time and not overtime, but that's going to piss people off. I think the federal labor laws let you just pay straight time, but it's still going to increase the budget whether you pay them straight time or overtime for those 4 hours.
Right.
And letting them off is going to just kind of confuse things. So you bring up some good points. Another point on the 12-hour shifts, the lieutenants, what happened when I was a sergeant and lieutenant is we basically we just split it in half. So you had 2 lieutenants, which, I mean, it is kind of a waste of manpower because you don't have that many more people under you. You'll have 2 lieutenants on a day shift and 2 lieutenants on the evening shift, as compared to having, one on each rotation. So that's something that all that would have to be worked out. But
it's a lot to think about, and there's nothing off the table. And I'm thinking about everything and throwing up all kind of ideas to see if how it sticks. And I learned quickly that a lot of rumors get started that way when we're just trying to brainstorm. So I have to be careful. Like, hey, this is just something we're thinking about, not something that we're actually going to. When I start having these conversations, for sure.
You called it water cooler talk.
Yeah, or high school locker room talk, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. One person. Because if you tell me something. Go ahead, Tim. No, I was going to say, if you tell me something and I tell the next person, it's not that we're thinking about 12-hour shifts. It's next week we're going to 12-hour shifts. And that's how the police world is, man. That's what's really funny, man. But, it is what it is, man.
The other thing I was going to point out is when we say we're 156 officers short, which is the number right now, that's 156 officers, right? We're not short sergeants. We're not short lieutenants. We're not short captains. We're short 156 officers, workers, car takers. So that's why the sergeants are having to step up and answer calls. That's why lieutenants that are in the detective divisions are actually handling cases and on call-out rotations. We're just having to have everybody in the department step up and do more.
Yeah, well, when you said 156, it didn't impact me until you just said that, because you always think from an operational standpoint that there's openness here, there, and the other. If you top heavy in rank, and you're 156 officers short, I'm telling you, if you're in Baton Rouge and you're listening, these guys and girls are doing a remarkable job, because 156 workers is significant. That's a huge disparity in the amount of service that a police department can offer you. So if you break them 150 something down into 4 different districts and 4 different and 3 different. Well, you got 6 different rotations. I mean, you looking at, you could really fill a whole nother district, really probably 2 districts, a district and a half with the amount of people that you're missing, man. That's a significant number of workers. I didn't really factor it in until you explained it that way. I wish you well in recruiting. I put out a podcast and I just put out some ideas, man. And a couple of ideas I had were, hey, man, we may have to shut down our recruiting, put them 10-8 and recruit part-time. I thought maybe you could pay those guys part-time, or some of the other divisions. If you're having trouble recruiting, that's operational stuff that you have to consider, making sure the traffic people, 10-8, I've always thought forever, even before you started working there, that K9 should have at least one K9 on every shift. And the K9 officers will give you 1,000 reasons why that's not a good idea. But the one reason that it's a good idea is that you have a dog to help out with some of these calls, and they can work the training scenarios out, between the people that work day shift, evening shift, or whatever. But that was something that I just recommended looking into. So I don't know if it's a
great idea. We've looked at trying to more localize some of those services, like put a general detective on every squad that can help with, follow-ups and being available. And same thing with motors and K9. It's definitely something that is being thought about and considered. We're kind of short, and we don't have that many K9 officers to go to every squad, right? We don't have traffic offices about half the size as what it used to be,
Wow. That's amazing.
So, but I've had conversations with those guys. Hey, we got a lot of sergeants here in motors. Y'all are expected to be out there answering recs, right? We're going to audit that. There's no reason why we got to get the rec numbers up.
Okay, well, if you're holding people accountable, that's all you can ask for. And kudos to you. But I will say this, don't be scared. And I'm saying this with all due respect. Don't be scared to be the first guy to change the system, because the system needs updating periodically. And a lot of people, especially chiefs, I don't think make the hard decisions because they don't want to piss everybody off. They don't want to disrupt the ebb and flow. But if you're in a critical, you literally are the only chief that has, to my knowledge, ever been this critical on manpower. So I say don't be afraid. Just understand this. You have to make decisions because you're the chief of police for the police department and the community. You have to do what's best for everybody. Of course, you're going to do what's best for your officers, but maybe 12-hour shifts is best, maybe putting K9, So I'm just saying, be open-minded and don't listen to the detractors that say, it's always been like this, because guess what? Always been like this is the worst answer you can get. If anybody tells you that, just go to the next guy. Let's transition a little bit. I know you're probably under time constraints, so I don't want to keep it too much longer, but I do want to ask you about intelligence-based policing. And do you have that concept in your portfolio, if you will? And when you took over as chief, do you have any crime-fighting strategies that you have implemented that are maybe different to reduce violence? Because when I was there, we had a bunch of things that we were doing in the intelligence division, crime gun intelligence division. Do you have any initiatives that your administration, because ultimately, whether it's good or bad, it's going to come back to you. So do you have any new objectives that are targeting violent crime that you can speak of?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things I did very early on, I gave myself just a little bit to talk to everybody and see what was, kind of get a pulse for everything. But one of the things I did very early on was create a special investigation division. I saw that around the department we had a lot of people doing the same work, but they weren't answering to the same boss or really coordinating with each other. And so I took and created the special investigation division, which puts CJIC, all our task force people, DEA, ATF, FBI, marshals, then narcotics, the narcotics people, the plainclothes with the DEA task force guys, gave them crime analysts, crime statisticians, and a uniform element to all work together to go after not really like jumping out on corners or anything like that, but really doing investigative work, going after the most violent people in our community, going after, synonyms, whatever you want to call them, gangs, right, violent street groups, whatever, right? Get a lot of flack over, why don't you say gangs? Whatever. I'll say gangs. It's just FBI freaks out when you start labeling right, people as part of a gang. Yeah. So whatever you want to call them, going after these people that are repeat offenders, and they've been doing tremendous work. They've been doing a lot of good stuff. That's the group that got the largest fentanyl seizure we've ever had in state history last year through their work. They've been getting machine gun conversion device switches off the streets left and right, going after and targeting these members of the Vultures and Bleedas and bringing charges against them that are getting grand jury indictments for being members of gang activity, right? So putting all of them together has been a huge deal, having them all pull in the same direction and going after these most violent offenders. I think that's because if you look back to last year in 2024, the first quarter of last year, our numbers were out of the roof. Everybody was freaking out saying we were going to have the highest number of homicides we've ever had in the history of the city and all this stuff, because we were having a problem with these different groups shooting up each other. But we really turned the corner when we started being proactive and going after them and setting officers after these in these areas where we know that the crime is happening and after these people that we know are doing the crime.
Okay, well, that's good, man. I had heard about... The
other thing I'm doing that, and I'll share with you and the people that are listening, the other thing we're doing is coordinating with the state, trying to get the Attorney General to come in to Baton Rouge like they did in New Orleans to help us out with prosecution. One of our biggest issues is just repeat offenders, people bonding out of jail on extremely low bonds, and then being out committing more crimes. The time from arrest to trial is too long, and we not holding them in prison for that much time. They're bonding out. They don't have any kind of ankle monitors, no monitoring. So working with the Attorney General's office to come in and get us higher bonds, quicker turnaround, to prosecute some of these things. I like very specifics. And so what I share with people is we just had an officer-involved shooting that happened a couple weeks ago. Officer gets behind a car, stops it for running a red light. When he lights it up, had 3 people bail out the car, all armed. He went after the driver, who was carrying a Draco, which is little, of course, a miniature AK-47. He went after the driver. Driver tripped, fell, rolled over, pointed a gun at him. He defended his life and shot the guy. The guy is a convicted felon, possession of firearm by a convicted felon, had a bunch of cocaine, possession with and distribute cocaine in the vehicle, possession of firearm with a CDS, aggravated assault, right, with a firearm, which is now a felony. And he just got off probation a couple months ago for armed robbery. He's already out on the street with a $50,000 bond.
Yeah, and see, that's where the criminal element is able to not only be successful and continue their crime spree, but also to cause violence in a city that you're trying to protect, that your officers are trying to protect. And when I spoke with the mayor, he specifically... It
empowers them, too. It empowers them and the people around them when they know that I can shoot at the police, I can commit crime, and there's nothing going to happen to me.
Well, no, you're 100% right. It does empower them, because knowing that you're going to have a low bond and be able to get out quick just says that, hey, it's okay. I might have to sit for a minute, but I'll be back out a day or 2 a week or a month, whatever it takes. But when the mayor and I did the podcast, he mentioned this, and I thought it was an excellent idea. Start publicizing a lot of these things and track through the media. His analogy was, as a coach, everybody knows our record. We need to let the people know these judges' records and stuff. As far as why is such and such being let out on bond, he's out on bond twice in the same month. He's got a $50,000 bond for attempt murder, for a lot of the things that you talked about. And I think until we publicly hold them accountable, so I agree with the mayor, until we hold them publicly accountable, they're going to continue doing what they're doing. So getting copies of this information, the bond information and stuff, and saying, hey, this guy's out on this bond for that reason. That guy that you just talked about, he should have $1 million bond to where he can't get out. And I don't care what people say. The police department has to fight crime, and people have to go to jail. And sometimes it don't look good. Sometimes it looks violent. Sometimes it looks like people are being manhandled. But from an objective standpoint, and I've been hands-on with people, sometimes you have to go hands-on. Sometimes you have to shoot in situations where you put in a deadly force encounter, because police don't have to be victims. Everybody that's listening, I tell the cops all the time, you don't have to be a victim. Don't allow the media scrutiny to make you get hurt. And don't think that if somebody punches you in the nose, you can't punch back. And I fully believe that if people are doing things right and using the amount of force necessary, that you'll back them up. And I hope that other departments back their people up. It's defend yourself, but do it the right way. As simple as that.
It's all about being a professional, right? Being a law enforcement professional. And so, if you need to use force, you do it professionally, right? If you need to kick somebody's butt, then you do it professionally. And that means using the force that you need to use. Once the handcuffs go on, then you stop using the force, right? It's all about being professional.
That's right.
You talk to people, it's how you treat people, it's the amount of force you use on people.
Yeah, I was very successful, and the community was one of the main reasons I was as good a cop as I was, because I was able to get information from sources that didn't even like police in general. So I had one lady who told me her son was a rapist, and he was later convicted. I won't mention his name, but I was able to get information from his own mother. She said, "You're the only cop that's ever been nice to me. I'll tell you where he's at." And she told me where he was at, and I was able to make the arrest. But, and I've told cops on other podcasts, you have got to be personable. You have got to be out here. You have got to let these people see that you're a human being. You don't have to shoot basketball with them. You don't have to hand them out candy. You can just be a normal dude and just talk casual conversation with them, whether they're gang members or not. I always tell cops, you don't have to be, even with the bad guys, you don't have to be adversaries. They do what they do. We do what we do. I was able to interact with gang members anywhere. I still see them out eating, whatever. I still see them, and people are like, you don't get scared. Why would I get scared? I was fair. They knew I handled my business, but they knew that I was fair about it. Also, as well as I do, the streets, they're not going to let a dirty cop exist. And I don't mean dirty like stealing money. I mean, if they put people in jail for everything, if they constantly hounding people, they're going to strike back. They're not necessarily going to create violence, but they're going to create uproar or turmoil or whatever. Most of them are okay as long as you fair but firm.
Yep.
Can't put everybody in jail.
Well said.
And everybody don't need to be in jail. I had wanted to talk a little bit before we leave. I had wanted to talk about your recruiting and me personally. Okay, so there's a Baton Rouge. When I started in 1996, and I still think today, the same areas you have problems with. You have high crime, known drug areas. You have a lot of violence. The predominant violence in Baton Rouge, inner city, is young black males that are creating a lot of violent acts, either against each other or to other people. A lot of times it's gang type stuff like you're referring to. Are y'all doing anything to address interacting with people like that? I don't mean having these events because like I told the mayor, there's a lot of people that's already on your side and we have a lot of events for them. And are y'all doing anything to address this portion of the age brackets where these young black males are introduced into gangs and stuff like that? Do y'all have any plans to say, hey, we would rather you do this than that? Because a lot of times violence is respected in that culture. And we got to stop that culture and make them think that being smart and graduating is a better option than being violent. So kind of touch on that, if you will.
Yeah. So, of course, I say all the time, I go anywhere, that anytime we can put our officers and the public in the same space together, having interactions when someone didn't call 911 and there's not an emergency, the better. So we can break down some of those walls and some of those barriers so we can see each other as people and not just the roles that we're playing. And we got to do that earlier and earlier. We're seeing suspects getting younger and younger, victims getting younger and younger. Last year, we arrested 16 juveniles for committing homicides. That's not attempted homicides or shooting at someone. That is actually killing people. That's mostly 14, 15, 16-year-olds that are committing homicides last year. This year, we're up to 6, which is about 15 to 20% of our arrests for homicides this year are committed by 15, 16-year-olds. So there's a lot of, I believe, systems in place that fail a 15-year-old to the point where he decides he wants to pick up a gun and shoot somebody. Whether that is the family, whether that's school, whether it's church, whether it's community groups. We need everybody's help in reaching out to these kids younger and younger so they don't go down this path of violence. So we're working with as many people as we can in partnership with as many people as we can. The mayor's office has a really good program that they're going to be announcing and launching within the next couple of weeks, maybe a month, to kind of go after this kind of stuff and interact, especially with young people and specific groups of people, to offer them resources to get out of the life of violent crime. And if they don't, then it's a police issue, right? And we're going to go after them with the full extent that we are able to. But so there's a lot of things that we are trying to do and we're continuing trying to do because there is a problem there. And we're working with as many people as we can because it's not simply a problem we can arrest our way out of, especially when we're dealing with 15 and 16-year-olds that are just going to juvenile detention. So we got to have as many partners and as many people come up to help us with it as we can.
The mayor did tell me about that initiative, and I won't get into it, but whenever you're looking at this segment of society that is influenced by gangs and violence, it's, like I said, it's predominantly young black males. And I thought the mayor, had a different perspective because he saw the same things that you and I saw, just from a different vision, right? He was seeing it as a coach. So he understands a lot of things that we see being out there involved in the community. And I'll say this, just like I told him, we need to make sure that we do our best to get them out of these environments because none of the programs seem to work once you give them opportunities if you leave them in the same environment. And I don't mean that you have to pay for somebody to move, but give them the opportunity to make so much money or give them a trade, teach them how to lay bricks, whatever the case may be, sheetrock, I don't know. But allow them the ability to get out of, we'll just call it the hood for lack of a better term, get out of these impoverished areas that they grew up in. And I had one guy told me one time years ago, probably 20 years ago, he said, hey, man, we ain't got no choice. We in the hood. And I said to him, you can break the cycle. All it takes is one generation, right, TJ? One generation.
Yeah.
All you got to do is get yourself out and your kids ain't going to be in it, or get your kids out if they're already born. So we have to
Exactly.
try to incentivize people that are in these areas, and we don't have to target Bocage with these because they don't have this issue. This is South Baton Rouge, North Baton Rouge. Some of the areas that you came up as a young cop, like I said, they're all still bad areas with good people in it, but there are bad areas that never change, and we got to do. It's not really a police function. It's more of a police function now than it ever was because of the dynamics of policing. But
it's us partnering with those organizations, and when they're doing, like, that's why we are partnering with summer camps all summer, right? And having officers show up at the summer camps to interact with the youth and showing them examples of how to be and how they could be better, and they don't have to follow this other lifestyle. That's why we're partnering with the Inspiration Center that's being built at Howe Park. And so it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility to give young people things to do with music studios and video games and gym and tutoring, and Boys and Girls Club is going to be doing program out of there. And we're actually going to have a community policing office where a police officer is there every day. So, it's being a part of the community and understanding, but knowing that we can't solve it all, that we got to rely on some other people to help us.
Glad we did the podcast because you clarified a whole lot of things because, of course, you only hear what people want you to hear. And one reason I wanted to do the podcast was to get your message out and for me to be able to talk to you about some things. And I will say that everything that we've talked about, I'm on board with. I think that you got a good idea. People that are listening, we have these programs. And like I said, I say we because I'm still BRPD at heart. We have these programs that the chief is implementing or have some type of function with. But we still have to make arrests. So we can't be your friends all the time. If you're in one of our programs and you're committing crimes, we're gonna come get you. So the police department's primary function is law and order. Secondary, you have to do the things that you talked about. And I think that your administration is keeping a good balance there to where we're holding people accountable, but we're also trying to engage in a different manner of law enforcement. And like I said, you have to be much better at everything now. You have to be a counselor. You have to be able to fight. You have to be open-minded. And officers, never lose your compassion. If you lose your compassion, you don't need to be a cop. And that's one thing I've talked about on my podcast a lot. So before we leave, I would like to thank you for your time. I'm proud of you for going from that guy I knew in Mall City and in the foot pursuit. I'm proud of you from going from that guy to being the chief of police. And it sounds like you got things in order. It sounds like you care about your officers, you care about your community, and you care about the outlook of the city. And I hope that you and the mayor can get lockstep and listen and achieve all y'all's objectives. Remember the old people, reserve, part-time, or just to consult, man. If you have a question, there's a lot of people that were talented, that have experience, wisdom, and knowledge. We don't like our wisdom and knowledge just to go to waste. So if there's anything we can do to help out, make sure that, you bring us on board, whether it be for pay or free, or just, like I said, a phone conversation. And kudos.
Yeah, so I did want to say that before we got off, Tim, is that I know you have a lot of former officers or just even civilians or whoever listening. Help us be part of the solution. It's real easy to get on Facebook and in the comments and trash the community and trash the department and talk negative. But if you got something going on, let us know how we can be better. Let us know how we can do better. I am more accessible than anyone. All right, you can call and make an appointment. You can go on brpd.com. I launched a program. It's called Chat with the Chief. Lower right-hand corner, you click that, fill out a form. It goes straight to my secretary and communications director, and they'll set you up an appointment to come talk to me, to your group, to have breakfast, to have lunch, come sit in my office, or you got a group of 15, 20 people that you want me to come talk to and answer questions face-to-face. I am willing to do it. If you have solutions and things that you think we could do better, please reach out. Help us be part of the solution. And I'm on. If you need anything else, you're hearing anything else out there, Tim, just a phone call away. Let me know.
Y'all know how to get in touch with this guy. Most of y'all work for him. The ones that are belly aching, if you got something to tell them. The platform is not Facebook to bring negative attention to the city police, because ultimately you're not going to be the chief one day and somebody else will be. But the organization doesn't deserve the negative attention that a lot of people give it that are retired or that are there that are using Facebook as a platform. So let's remember we were cops, and let's remember how we handled ourselves, and let's try to help this chief and this administration bring the prestige back to Baton Rouge City Police Department. Thank you, Chief, for your time.
For sure. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Head on the Block. I'm Tim Henderson, the host. I look forward to dropping another podcast soon. Please give us any comments, likes, dislikes, or any topics y'all would like to discuss. Thank you.